So, hi to everyone who may not know my face. I'm Emma Miller. I am the Community Engagement Manager for HISA. That means, oh, and that's my dog. That means I am the manager in the department that includes clubs and societies, sports, ultimately some other things that we have in the works. But I'm the main clubs and societies person. Um, and Amanda Fleet, I want to introduce to you. Amanda is our sporting development coordinator. She's amazing. She came in right at Christmas break and is really excited to be able to work with any of your clubs that are doing sporting and to support you guys in whatever way she can. She's a wealth of knowledge, plays a lot of sport herself, is involved with several sports organizations, and is just generally a fabulous person. And then Elena, let me introduce Elena to you guys. Elena is actually our HISA advice service. So she helps students who, well, go ahead. You can explain what you do, Elena.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. So the advice service used to be part of the advocacy department that you probably would have heard with SVRs and things like that. But I've shifted over to community engagement and working with Emma because I think it fits better with engaging with students and supporting them in tough times. So it could be things from if you've been accused of plagiarism and academic misconduct, I'm essentially your go-to to help you prepare documents, statements, sit with you through hearings, give you representation when needed. It's almost like having a legal service that's independent to the university, but for for insurance purposes, it is not a legal service. But I've also provided some advice to Emma in case there's been any disputes within clubs and societies following kind of any policies and procedures. So I think me fitting in within community engagement will offer further support when it comes to policies or the governance side of things. So I'll be working with Emma this summer to get some of the governance docs up. But for individual clubs and societies, obviously seek Emma's support for any governance documents. But if you want just another kind of second opinion, give me a shout. I have a legal background, so policy documents are essentially my favorite thing to do before I go to sleep. So just give me a shout when you need anything.
She's our policy expert, which I'm really excited to use to help. As you know, we're trying to help clubs and societies develop into having kind of like some of the long-standing clubs already have their governance going and their own policies and constitutions. The new ones, not so much. So we're trying to kind of build the resources that we can offer you guys. So part of that is the training that we're doing today. So this is just a real kind of quick down and dirty going through some of the remaining kind of the big points, right? But knowing that it's coming close to the school year end, the term year end, so hopefully this will be helpful as you guys look at kind of moving forward to handing over the club to a new committee, possibly to use the summer to think about finances, etc. So Elena's going to do risk assessments. Amanda is going to do the annual general meeting, which I saw Snow Sports has scheduled. And so your other clubs will be looking at scheduling before the school year wraps up. And then I'll talk to you about banking and finances.
So yeah, so risk assessment training is very important. And as the plan in the beginning says, why do skeletons never take risks? They have no guts. So we need to look at every risk possible that you would face in any events or kind of any organized group activity that you do to make sure that it's safe and also that it comes under the insurance side of things to the HISA as well. So I'll go through that just now. Okay, so in this training session, it will be quick. It does look like a lot of points, but it's not. I'll just go over the 101 around risk assessments and why they're important. I'm sure you guys will capture the importance around risk assessments, but it's just a couple points I want to just bring to your attention that you just need to consider when you're sitting with your committees or discussing these with other members within your group in case something comes up and you need to question yourself if it was risk assessed. I'll do a really quick activity, which is interaction. So I'll kind of ask people to think out loud if possible. Just do a quick case study and then apply kind of your skills in creating your risk assessment into that case study. And then find out what would happen if things go wrong. Then close with the recap and questions as well, things that might come up when you're doing the risk assessments. So yeah, why are they important? Why should we even bother with risk assessments? As HISA, we are committed to make sure that anything that we deliver looks to prevent incidents and injuries, or else we would just let you all go and do whatever you wanted. We have a duty responsibility around the health and safety and well-being of our members. So risk assessments are, as it says there, the simplest and the most effective way for groups to control and mitigate kind of any obvious risks or dangers. Now, risk assessments are usually an afterthought after you're planning the event because you're excited about what you're planning, the people you're engaging, how you're going to communicate that. And then the wet blanket known as risk assessment comes through and you're like, oh, right, so we're going to actually need to find out and see what we can do to mitigate risk. It is important because risk assessing can change some of your plans that you have in place. Maybe the things you didn't consider before, and you'll see that kind of in the case study. Now, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. When you guys, and I'm sure some of you, because you are kind of sports-oriented or adventure-oriented courses, will know that risk assessments vary from place to place in terms of what you're measuring. But with us, we try to make measuring risk assessments as simple and effective as possible. And we want to make sure they're tailored to your club or society. Because what, for example, the Mountain Bike Society is doing might not be the same as the Tabletop Society. So we want to make sure that the risk assessment template that we offer is able to kind of be flexible in what you guys do. So the risk assessment that we'll provide to you for you to complete will allow you to consider what risks are there and who would be at most risk because of that hazard. It'll also ask you to consider what measures you'll be taking to lessen that risk, because we can't always avoid it, but lessen the risk, and any additional steps you need to take from there. And because, again, hopefully if you're working in a group and organizing an event, you're not putting all the responsibility on one person. You are able to kind of allocate or delegate the responsibility for each risk improvement action to different people, and also set clear timescales so people know that these need to be done by a certain time frame before your event takes place. So yeah, that sounds really exciting. So there must be more to it. But like I said, the common misconception is that they're time consuming, but they're really not. The way that we're asking you to complete risk assessments through HISA is actually when it's necessary. So we look at the two types of risk assessments that you should look to do. So this helps limit the number of assessments you'll be doing through the year. So the two are, so there's one that is done yearly. So this is essential to carry out a yearly risk assessment for anything that is considered routine. So for example, I know that the winter sports, I think it's the Winter Sports Club, meet once or twice a week and go to the gym and work out together. That's quite a routine activity that you do. So the risk assessment that you would do, because you're doing this on a regular basis, you would only need to complete that once. And it's not complicated, because then you would be able to pick up all the bits and pieces that could happen at these, and you don't have to account for anything that might happen outside that. One thing to note is that in the future, if you haven't done already, we ask that you submit the yearly risk assessments to HISA activities before you actually do them. So if you guys are planning to go to the gym twice a week, every week for the academic year, make sure you complete the risk assessment before you guys start going. In this case, it's better to ask permission than forgiveness, because if something happens and the risk assessment has been done, it's a big issue. So you must submit that to HISE activities, and it needs to be approved by the community engagement team, which mainly will be Emma and Amanda, not so much me. And it's just before you get things started. However, there might be things that are event specific that your group might decide to do that doesn't happen routinely. So for example, if the mountain bike club want to do I don't know if it's a thing, but like a 24-hour relay race just to raise money for one of the charities, this doesn't happen every 24 hours or might not happen regularly. It's maybe just a one-off thing. So because it's event specific, your group will need to submit an individual risk assessment for that activity. And again, it needs to be done before you actually commit it, and in plenty of time as well, like not the day before. Make sure to submit that with as much notice as you can. Again, if you have any questions around these, pop them in the chat and I'll address them at the end of the presentation. So let's just move on to the next one. So in this one, I'm going to read, there's two lists here, and one of these lists is considered yearly, the other is considered event specific. I'm going to read through the first list. You can read through them. It's just in case if it's not coming in too clearly. So the LGBT Society, for example, meets every Friday for a movie night at the main lecture hall on campus. The Mountaineering Society meet every other Wednesday evening at the local gym to work out together. The Gaming Society normally meets on Discord, so online, on Thursday nights, but has decided to meet in person on campus this week. So these, for example, will fit under one or two. So I'm going to read the next set, and then in the chat, if you could put in or say out loud which one you think belongs to which. So which is a yearly, which is event specific. So in the other group, the weightlifting and powerlifting societies are running a body positivity awareness day on campus. The Quidditch Club have decided to run one fundraising event each month to raise funds for equipment. The Chess Club will be running their first on-campus tournament at the end of the year to raise funds for its chosen charity. Now, I can't see people, so does anybody want to take a stab at which order it goes? Is it event then yearly, or is it yearly then event? Some of these are tricky for you to consider because I did catch M on one of them, especially around the Gaming Society. So just have a think. It will fit one into the other. These are not individual ones, but each block will fit into one category. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Hi, so the chess club running their on-campus tournament at the end of the year, that could be seen as a yearly specific thing.
Okay.
Can you hear me? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can hear you. Okay, right. I'm going to reveal the answer. That's an interesting take on that one.
That's if it was every year. It could just be an event specific.
Yeah, so this is how they've paired. So the LGBT Society, Mountaineering Gaming. So these would be considered yearly risk assessments because these are regular reoccurring ones. The event specific, again, on this one, will be running their first on-campus tournament. They might only run 1 year, so we don't know. So it's on this, it would be event specific because it's a tournament. It's not something that would be reoccurring throughout the academic year. So on that one, I would say it would be event specific. The Gaming Society, this was another one that brought some people questioning it because they meet every Thursday, but then they decided to change the location. With this, because the meeting itself would be risk assessed in terms of anything that happened, because it would happen on campus, you could consider that as a yearly thing because they would be able to plan ahead of time in case in any other occasion they decide to meet on campus, because if it decides to be a reoccurring one as well. So it's just something like that to consider. These are made up, by the way. This does not happen. There is, for example, a Quidditch club where I studied, but these are just ideas, examples that I had around what fits under a yearly, what fits under event specific. If you ever have questions about whether you would be a yearly or event specific, just have a chat with Emma or anyone within the community engagement team, and we'll be able to kind of set you right.
Yeah,
So
I'm
Oh,
gonna
sorry, go
interrupt
ahead.
real quick, sorry. And just with when we call it the yearly risk assessment, it's just yearly because you do it once a year, but it covers kind of all the routine things you do during the year. And so it would be possible if your club is basically doing the same things every year, that you kind of update the one you turned in the previous year. You know, you may not see tons of changes year to year on those if your club is still doing the routine activities. But you know, things could change even if it's the same activities. The environment where you're doing them may have changed, or like the pandemic had to move inside. So you know, you do want to make sure that if you're looking at a previous year's risk assessment, that you update it for the current circumstances.
Yep, 100%. I've definitely seen that with clubs and societies. For example, a gaming society at my last job used to meet in person quite often, and play on campus, but then COVID happened and they had to take all their activities onto Discord, but they still had to do a risk assessment, because they needed to cover in case, from what, like, all I can say is that things got spicy over Discord and things were said or disclosed, it had to be risk assessed and they had to understand what the procedure was to get that disclosure too. So that slightly changed when I was on campus, because I would be on campus. So if they had an issue, they would come see me. Whereas if they're online, who are they going to report to? How do they get in touch with someone? So yeah, so it's things like that you need to consider. But normally, if things are not going to remain the same and you use the previous year, your committee can sit together and just do a review at the very beginning, and see if anything is potentially going to change. If it's not, then you can just make the submission as is, or make any additions that you need to do. So just quickly moving on to the case study. So this is just applying what we were learning there. So I'm asking everyone here to take part in a Zorb football event. I don't know if you guys have seen this. There's an illustration there. It's a really fun way to play football in a bubble. So just the wee background. So Zorb, you're wearing essentially a bubble on your upper body and you're running around trying to get possession of the ball and just playing football essentially. It actually was invented in Norway, which is very interesting because I didn't think they would be into like these aggressive sports, but it. So I want you to take that into consideration and keep in mind some of the risks that you would be looking for in organizing this. So you can actually see some of the risks are actually within this photo. I didn't plan that. It just seemed to happen. So some of the ideas are there that you should consider when you're doing the risk assessment, because it takes careful consideration what you need to do in looking for risks that might happen. So looking at this, the risk assessment form that you'll be provided to complete, be it yearly or event specific, we'll ask you these questions. So that we've actually broken it down in it's a bit more user friendly than what you would find potentially in businesses. Usually there's scales and in colors and things like that. We're just literally trying to ask you what the basics are and get you thinking what potential risks would be. So the information is there, it tells you who to contact and where to submit it. And again, it just allows you to provide some of the information as a background. If there's any questions around a risk assessment once it's been submitted, Emma or someone within the team will contact you and just ask you for further clarification. You'll never just not hear from Emma again. You will get feedback on the ones that you submit. So thinking about the Zorb football, are there any things here? So the type of activity, so what kind of activities would you be seeing at a Zorb football event? What potential hazards would they be? How would they be harmed? What could we potentially be doing already? And is there anything further that we can do? And to whom should we attach this action to? In this part, the date's not relevant as long as the date is before the event takes place. So does anybody want to start and take a guess of like one activity that you might see during Zorb football and what the hazard of that activity would be? Right, so to start you off, if you've never seen Zorb football in action, people are kind of just running at each other and to try to get possession. So an activity, for example, to be running at each other. What are the hazards? slip, trip and fall, injuries, who might be harmed, the players. What are you already doing? Maybe you're providing training to the players to say, hey, don't run to one another with, fast force, with tremendous force and try to bounce each other off whenever you will get injured. Is there anything you need to do to control this risk, to potentially have a ref or have any further training or pull people off if they continue to do it, and who should do it? Probably the activity leader. So I'll give you a peek here. These are some that I came up with for this. So your spectators, they're watching the players. That's the activity. What are the hazards? Well, one of your spectators could be hit by a Zorb player because they could just bounce and hit the crowd. So they could be injured by the fall of the impact. So who might be harmed? Your spectators or your players as well. What can you already be doing? So you can set up a designated area to keep the crowd watching from a safe distance. Was there anything further you could do? Maybe a bit of signage to tell people where spectators are meant to be watching so they don't go onto the field. And who should do that? Maybe the activity leader. Another one, again, as I mentioned, players running and fighting for ball possession. The players are colliding into each other and they're causing injury, so the players would be affected. What you are doing, so maybe you set up some contact rules to stay only, you can bump from the front and only when visible, and not kind of from behind. You can maybe provide some training to the players to show how they can hold on to internal handles so they can brace themselves and secure themselves within the harness in the Zorb. And again, who could do that? Activity leader, depends. And again, the activity, but looking at not just the players colliding, but if there's foreign objects that enter the field of play. So I don't know, if someone chucks a tomato, I don't know. Those things happen, or if somebody has things in their pockets and it causes damage to the Zorb equipment. So the Zorb ball pops. Again, it could damage the players and the equipment. So what you could do already, that you make sure that the players don't have anything loose in their pockets or anything in their pockets, period. What could you make sure to do is that you marked off the area where the play area is, so no spectator could enter and chuck a tomato at someone. So things like that. So it's a common sense approach. It's best always to kind of start with the activity and then think, right, who can be affected? Can a spectator be affected? Can a player be affected? Anybody else be affected? And normally that helps you then start picking up what the hazards are. So you don't necessarily need to go in order. You can start kind of looking at who might be affected and how and why. So this is something we would be looking from you. Like I said, the only thing here is around the action date. I have to be confirmed because it would be depending on when the event took place. But like I said, always make sure it's before the event takes place rather than after. So we've finished that risk assessment, and we think that, yeah, that's it. Those 3 points covered everything. I think that's it. We are ready to play the game. So this is what happened. Do you believe the risk assessment covered everything there that we prepared for? But then you can just type yes or no in the chat if you don't want to say that. But that's essentially, let's say, what happened to your. So just a quick video to see that. So just moving on quickly to the recapping questions, just so I can pass this on to Amanda and Emma. So you're looking at your form, but you're like, I have no idea. What do I do here? I don't know what to fill in. Speak to us, speak to Emma, speak to Amanda, or speak to me if you're really stuck, and we can sit together and have a chance to look through the form and assess kind of what are potential risks in the activity you're looking to do, who it can harm, and how you can mitigate those risks. I think there's some people throughout the, or I think not I, but I would definitely, and other people have sometimes sat there. And if you are an over warrior, kind of the way I am, not everything will lead to death. So we can talk things through and make sure that, that we put a realistic reflection of what the potential risks are. I remember when I first started to fill those forms as part of another job, that a slip and fall could lead to death, and my boss was like, no, potentially, but she's like, you can just say it's more of an injury, and first aid may be required, but you don't have to put down death. That's just because I always went to the extreme. So you completed the form. Where do I send it to? So as I said, the email address is the HISA activities inbox. So you would send that across to them. They would review it, and you will get feedback if you need to make any amendments on the form before your event takes place. Again, if you think you've submitted the wrong form, so you thought you were it was supposed to be event specific, but you've done it as a yearly or vice versa, you will get feedback on that. And just give us a shout and tell us. I think obviously this is supposed to be event specific and it was yearly, and we'll tell you if you need to make any amendments. And then finally, where can I see examples of previous risk assessments? Everyone, depending on the society or group that they're in, will do it in different degrees. Some will do it just to kind of follow the format, and others will do it with a bit more detail and maybe how they learned it on their course. As long as you cover the bare minimum and what we're asking you, that's great. If you guys decide to go above and beyond and use maybe some of the risk assessment templates that you use in your course, that's fine. I mean, I would probably say that's a good way to do it, because you would be able to show what you've learned, and it gives some of the theory into practice. So what we'll do is we'll put examples on in the kind of spaces for clubs and societies, so you can view how and what kind of examples are there in case you're stuck for any ideas. But I'll let you put any questions that you might have in the chat, and I'll fling over to Emma, so we can fit in the two presentations.
Great. Yeah, we'll just switch over to banking. And yeah, put any questions in the chat or email us if you come up with more questions later on. So I'm going to talk to you about finances real quick. It's loading my presentation. Beautiful. So hopefully everybody can see that now. But yes, is that a yes? Okay. So banking for your club. So banking for your club is actually really pretty simple if you have experience having your own bank account. So the first thing you want to do, because some of the clubs take membership fees, apply for grants, fundraise, etc., you may need to deal with finances. Some of the clubs who don't at this moment, like maybe perhaps the chess club, may want to start charging fees so that you have a small pool of money that you can then use to like enter tournaments or buy new chess kits, or however the club best decides. So it's a good idea just to, even if right now you're not doing anything with money, to start thinking about that, because you may indeed want to do things with money in the future. So the first step is just talk to the bank you already use and explain your situation. You don't really want to open up a business account because that charges fees. And some banks can make it more difficult for clubs to like hand over their account to another treasurer year by year. So the first thing to do is talk to your bank. Don't use your own personal bank account for club monies though, because we've got to get records from you, and you don't want to cloud it up with your own personal accounts. So talk to your bank, tell them, look, we're a small group, community organization. We predict that we will be making transactions this many times a year. And every year the person who needs access to the bank might change. And then the bank will be able to give you some options in terms of what kind of account to open. I always just suggest as simple as possible. So explain your needs to the banks. It's a simple account for deposits and payments. You really don't want an account that's going to charge you fees. Having online or mobile banking is probably super necessary given this day and age and the various locations of where your treasurers or clubs might be banking. the big thing to look at is that it's easy to change hands because of the turnover rate of your presidents or your treasurers. Every year it might be someone else who is in charge of that banking. So you want to make sure that that's going to be fairly easy. We have had some experiences, for example, with Bank of Scotland, where that is not quite as easy and it takes a lot of time. And so you want to ask the bank about how easy that is. And I would say you don't need overdraft or credit because you don't want to ever be in a situation where you're spending money your club doesn't have. Consider a fully online bank account, especially if you're not going to deal with cash, because that can be really pretty simple. And the big thing is keep records of your banking. So keep records of your deposits and your withdrawals, because sometimes the line that the bank uses, and that'll be on your statements, is not actually very clear about what you purchased or who purchased or what it's for. So you want to be able to know that specifically. So keep records. You can match them up to your bank statements. Keep copies, photos, or scans of all your receipts, and then be prepared to turn in quarterly reports to us. We do this instead of requiring all of your banking to happen through us. We would just like to be able to keep an eye on things. That way we're making sure that everything is running smoothly, etc. And that if you were to get into like a pay dispute with some company you've contracted, then we can lend you our support and help with that, as long as you've got records that we can kind of, educate ourselves on. So the big thing with finances for your club is planning. Planning ahead of time. So budgets are kind of a necessary tool you will need. And you're really free to do budgets how you see fit. In a second, I'll show you the budget we use for the HISA grant application. I suggest you use Excel because then you can make it do all the functions, the sums, really easy, but everybody kind of has their own way. But the basic steps of having a budget: you want to list all the activities and events you want to do. So I suggest you do a yearly budget and you do a short-term budget after talking to your club about the events and activities that you want to do. So you want to list all those activities and events you have kind of planned in your mind to do, and then list all the elements in those activities or events that might occur a cost. So this could be rentals, service fees, equipment costs, food, bev, kind of anything you can think of that might occur a cost. After that, you want to get quotes or estimations for each of those elements. And I was always really nervous about asking a service provider to give me a quote, because then I felt like I was promising I would buy it from them or hire them. And don't feel like that. You can the whole point of getting quotes is then to help you decide if you're going to go with them or someone else. And businesses and service providers and coaches, they're really used to giving out quotes. It's not a big deal. So get your quotes. If you can't get quotes, estimate it based on whatever information you can find from the past, from online, etc. Don't forget that. That can be quite costly. Also shipping if you're buying things. So then after you get your quotes and your estimates, so you now know how much X activity or the year is going to cost you, you want to figure out how much money you have. So you want to figure out what's your income for the year. Is this from memberships? Is it from savings that the club saved the previous year? Is it from some other form of income you generate? So what's your actual cash? And then what is your income you plan on generating? So that's things like applying for grants. If you're successful, you'll get this much money. Or selling tickets to an event. We estimate 50 people will come at $5 a head. That's 250 pounds. Remember, with the estimate for generating income, that's not guaranteed, and you can't rely on that. So you have to be a little careful. You want to be smart and about your estimations, but you also have to realize that if it's not guaranteed money, then I can't promise to pay for something until I have that income guaranteed, right? And then the last thing to do is cut down on your costs, because usually we plan big and then realize we don't have the money to do so. So then we need to cut back, scale back to fit what our actual cash flow is. And then you can always say, if we get this grant or if this fundraiser does well, then we will add on X activity or X service. So this is just the HISA grant application. And in here, we've broken down some of the budgets for you. So on the left-hand side of both, I had to cut it into 2 pages. So on the left-hand side, we talk about, like, is it, the expenses for a product, for rentals, for services, coaching fees, miscellaneous, etc. And you put the price and the quantity, which then multiplies and tells you the total amount. On the right-hand side is where you put your cash flow, your income. So maybe it's from membership fees, maybe it's from fundraisers, maybe it's from your reserves that you've saved. That's internal. We've also included an external income because you may have a sponsorship, you may be getting some sort of kind of discount on the total from a service provider. You may have someone making donations, etc. So, on one side, you've got all your expenses. On the other side, you have all your income. For the HISA grants, what happens when you put all this together, this totals and it tells you how much money you take, left side minus the right side, how much money you need and how much money you're asking for to complete that whole project. So I'm going to move on to, just a note about records before I move on to the last bit about grants. Records are super, super important. I can't say that enough. Your treasurer should keep an online folder that has your budgets, your receipts, your invoices, your bank statements. You want to make sure it stays with the club and gets passed from one treasurer to the next. And that often means making sure the share permissions are open, are public. The worst thing, this happens all the time, is like, oh, I've shared the link to the folder with you, but that person can't actually access it, and the first treasurer is no longer available. They've gone on in the world, no longer are using that email. So it's really good to, I would suggest having a club email and to have online accounts, shared folders, all associated with the club email rather than a personal email. As I said, use a spreadsheet. That's the easiest way, but whatever works for you is great. It's really important to keep these records for the future of your club so that your treasurer can look back and say, well, last year it cost us X amount to do this activity. We want to do it again. I can then use those records to estimate my costs. So the last little bit, I'm going to talk to you about applying for grants. So both the Mountain Bike Club and Snow Sports Club successfully applied for the HISA grant this year. We aim to be able to offer a grant, a student group HISA grant each year. And we've got the guidance, etc., that walks you through that. But you can also apply to external grants, which can be anywhere from like 100 pounds from Tesco up to thousands of pounds from Sports Scotland. I suggest applying to multiple grants because you never know if you're going to get one, and you don't want to have to rely on income that you don't know if you'll get. The more you apply for, the better you get at it, the easier it becomes. So you can apply for grants that are open to community groups and unregistered nonprofits. So you can do that without HISA being legally the owner of that grant. Just your group can do that. If you want to apply for a grant that is for charities, for example, that would have to come through from HISA. We would be the legal body applying for that grant and owning those grant monies. And that takes on kind of a whole new aspect. So in order to do that, you would have to start talking with the community engagement team pretty early on to see if that is possible. But there are lots and lots of smaller grants, community group grants that you are eligible for and you can apply for. So you also really want to make sure you're applying for grants early. A lot of them will take like a 3-month waiting decision. So you need to plan early, plan now for a grant that you want the funds for in 4 months. Also pay attention to those submission deadlines for grants. Some of them are rolling and some will have a short window. And you want to make sure you are prepared before that window opens so that the application and whatever materials you need to turn in, you have time to submit those. So again, it's all about planning ahead, getting a jump on the kind of activities and events you want to hold and what grants might be available for that. So, planning ahead, using the summer to look at that is a great option. So to apply for a grant, this is kind of universal for all grants. It's also for ours. You need to prepare a proposal of whatever project or activity or set of activities you want to do, a clear budget for how much it'll cost, and how it matches whatever the aims of the grant are. So you may have a community group grant from Tesco, for example, that is looking to support community participation in physical activity in rural areas. So if you are applying to that grant and your application is about laying in bed and reading a book, that's not going to go, right? The projects need to match what the grant body is seeking to do. So make sure you have prepared a short little statement that lines up your activity with what the grant's mission is. They also want to fund activities that have real impact on people. And so that's something to think about. How does that have real impact? How does it make someone's life better? Think about something called in-kind contributions. This means your club is contributing to the project in one way or another that is not necessarily financial. It could be volunteer time, right? It could be other resources that the club has and is contributing to the project. It could be someone is offering free services to go with the project. Basically, if it's not worth money or time to you, why is it worth money to whoever is providing the grant, right? So a lot of times people reviewing grant applications want to see that you are investing something of yours into this project. And then make sure you follow your terms and conditions. Basically, if you don't follow your terms and conditions, or if you don't spend the funds as the grant application and the award states, you could be required to return the full amount to that body, whether or not you've spent it. So you want to be really careful, because it's money, that you follow all the terms and conditions that are stated in the grant and your award notice. So this is just a little screenshot of what our grant questions look like. Describing the project and talking about in-kind contributions. You'll see this is different for various bodies, but usually it's very similar, the same questions, same procedure, etc. So we only have 7 minutes left, so I'm going to turn it to Amanda to talk about your annual general meetings. And again, if you have questions, put them in the chat or email us at HISA Activities.
That's great. Thanks, Emma. I'm just going to share my screen, and don't worry because my presentation is really fast, so I won't keep you beyond 2. Here we go. Can we all see that? Yes, perfect. So my presentation is on AGMs, and I'll run through this quite quickly. So what is an AGM? So I'm sure you'll know this, and the clue is sort of in the name, but AGM stands for Annual General Meeting. And it's a meeting that happens on a yearly basis, and it's a requirement for all clubs and societies, provides them with an opportunity to update members on a range of matters, make important decisions, elect committee members, and just generally decide on the future direction of the club as well. So why are AGMs important? So there's a number of reasons why AGMs are important, and this isn't just in a university, club and society context, but many organisations in the real world hold AGMs as well. So they promote transparency and accountability, whilst also supporting democracy and encouraging open debate amongst club members. So basically, it just gives all members a chance to have their say on the actual running of the club and allows them to ask questions in an official setting. And having practice at holding AGMs while at UHI will be great experience for when you graduate as well. So how is an AGM held? So they're normally conducted face-to-face for ease of communication, but can also be done virtually or hybrid to make them as accessible as possible. For example, if your club's got members from all across UHI, a Teams or a Zoom meeting would definitely be the better option rather than trying to gather everyone in person in one place. So the minutes or notes taken during the previous AGM must be circulated to all attendees prior to the meeting, and an agenda needs to be created just outlining the structure of the meeting. So the president will chair the meeting and the secretary normally takes minutes or comprehensive notes of the meeting. So in terms of agenda, these are some of the points that the agenda might cover. So welcome and apologies from the members that can't make the meeting, previous minutes, different reports from committee members, just about how the club's been going in the past year, presentation of accounts, so that will be from the treasurer, any plans for the upcoming year, amendments to documents and policies, and the election of committee members. So this can take place however the club deems best in terms of electing committee members, but it's important that everyone who wants to be a committee member has a chance to run. And the club needs to have a president to lead things, a secretary to manage the admin and paperwork, and a treasurer to handle the finances, but you can have as many other committee positions as you want. So you could have a social secretary, a fixtures administrator, something to do with like planning travel, and you can call these positions anything. And then at the very end of the agenda, you need to have a section for any of the business as well. So I've got an example agenda just here. So this is from my floorball club. Floorball is just a kind of indoor hockey. So you can see that you've got different sections going all the way down and then a rough time of how long each of these should take. But obviously it just depends on the amount of discussion generated around each point. So after your AGM, the minutes need to be edited and circulated to all members, actions outlined and the person to take the action clearly stated. And for the new committee, a handover needs to be arranged where new committee members can be trained. So this should involve transferring any password, sharing contact lists and emails, as well as giving the new committee member a thorough briefing about what the role actually involves, kind of on a day-to-day basis and things like that. And the date for the next AGM must be set as soon as possible. It should probably be around the same time as the last one as well. So got through that really quickly, but if you've got any questions, just let me know.
Yeah, we've got a couple minutes left, so if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them, whether they have to do with this presentation or not.